Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It's been nearly a month since 40 acres burned near San Diego State University, but questions about brush management and palm tree removal remain. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Fire officials tried to answer those questions and concerns at a community forum last night. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas was there.
Questions remain after a fire burned 40 acres and destroyed one house near San Diego State last month. Community members wondered whether palm trees and overgrown brush could have been removed to prevent it. But San Diego fire rescue officials say private ownership of the land limits what they can do.
Most of the area and acreage that burned that we had on this fire was privately owned. It wasn't City of San Diego, it was privately owned. And so for us to go in there and clear that property out, would you like us to come in and knock down all your trees in your backyard? We can't. There's a process that we have to take.
Since July 2021, state law has required property sellers in high fire risk zones to get their defensible space inspected. That's generally a 100-foot radius around a structure. Assistant Fire Marshal Daniel Hypes said the San Diego Fire Rescue Department has some authority to clear brush within that radius, but only if there are structures.
In our scope and the laws that we enforce are 100 feet. So when you're down at the bottom of a canyon, there's no structures. We don't really have that authority to abate something if it's not within that defensible space area.
Fire officials say it takes the whole community to keep a neighborhood safe. They recommend planting fire-resistant plants within 100 feet of your home, removing any dead or dying vegetation, and trimming any tree branches that touch structures. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
We have another cool night ahead of us with temperatures falling into the lower 50s in many spots, even a few areas certainly quickly getting into those upper 40s. So another cool night. We'll be talking about the stormy pattern that's taking hold coming up.
Severe weather is bringing snow, rain, wind, and power outages to multiple states on both coasts today and into the weekend. Laura Aguirre brings us more on what's ahead.
Power outages, downed trees, flooded roads, and widespread damage to homes and businesses, the result of a wicked weather week for large parts of the Pacific Northwest, one that started with a deadly bomb cyclone that fueled back-to-back atmospheric river events, with the forecast showing several inches of rain and snow still to come across multiple states through Saturday.
We've got several more days of this, so major cleanup, or the bigger cleanup will have to be after the storm passes.
Many residents aren't waiting for the cavalry to arrive.
This is my generator set up. I just have a piece of plywood over it to keep the rain off it.
Some with power are setting up neighborhood phone charging hubs or helping to clear toppled trees from roads and driveways.
Yes, our parents basically raised us to put other people first.
In the higher elevations, the week's winter storm dump was a boon as several ski resorts opened.
It's just going to be a great day out on the slopes.
To the northeast, where a number of states received their first significant snowfall of the season.
This is an official National Weather Service snow stick, and right now we're up to 13.1 inches of new snow.
Other high marks in Pennsylvania and New York reached between 14 and 16 inches. Nearly 8 million people are under winter storm alerts that stretch through the region into the Appalachian Mountains through tomorrow. I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
Running up against the clock, the San Diego Housing Commission approved 3 leases for shelter spaces today. They include 263 beds at the San Diego Rescue Mission site in National City, the Alcohol Abuse Shelter in City Heights, and the Veterans Village of San Diego. The city is losing 600 beds when the Golden Hall Shelter and Father Joe's Village's Paul Mirabile Center both close at the end of the year. Our media partner, KGTV, spoke to homeless advocate John Brady, who says the quality of beds is just as important as the numbers when it comes to getting people off the streets.
This is not a congregate environment. Even what they're calling congregate is a maximum of 4 people to a room with a shared bathroom, lockers, and some privacy. So you're not in a room with hundreds of people. Therefore, some recovery can actually start to happen.
All 3 facilities have 6-month leases lasting from January to June, with the option to renew for up to 4 years. The plan will cost more than $1 million for that first 6 months alone. Funding is coming from money the city would have used for the shelters that are closing. San Diego is considering an ordinance that aims to preserve so-called at-risk affordable housing. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains.
When developers build affordable housing, the deed includes a restriction that guarantees rents will be affordable to certain income groups. But those restrictions can expire, leaving tenants at risk of unaffordable rent hikes. Under the new proposal, owners of affordable housing would have to give nonprofits and government agencies the option to purchase the property the moment the owner intends to sell. City Council member Vivian Moreno says that would close a loophole in state law.
This ordinance is reasonable and, if enacted, will be an effective tool to allow the city to keep deed-restricted units in place across San Diego. And it comes to us at a time where the construction of new homes is not keeping up with the need.
The ordinance would not apply to so-called naturally occurring affordable housing. These types of homes don't have rent restrictions on the deed, but because of their old age or lack of amenities are still affordable. Several public commenters said the city also needs more funding to preserve affordable housing. Councilmember Kent Lee says even with a first right of refusal, nonprofits and government agencies struggle to compete in the bidding wars over affordable housing.
Having policy and an ordinance in place is a significant first step, but having both the public and the private opportunities for funding so that there are entities who have the capacity and the ability to actually take advantage of those opportunities, that's a critical part of the bigger picture.
The Council's Land Use and Housing Committee on Thursday voted to advance the preservation ordinance to the full City Council. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The owners of an Imperial Beach apartment complex issued a mass eviction notice, and now tenants there are urging the City Council to intervene. That story is coming up. Some high schools in the San Diego Unified School District now have a place for new immigrant students to get help navigating their new surroundings. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen shows us today's grand opening of the Newcomer Welcome Center at Crawford High School.
Through dance and a ribbon cutting, San Diego Unified's Newcomer Welcome Center is officially open, with more than 75 languages spoken across the district and roughly 1,500 to 3,000 new immigrant students each year. San Diego Unified Interim Superintendent Fabiola Bagula says the center helps make these students and their families feel supported and cared for.
By welcoming these children and families, affirming our belief in a world where every child deserves the chance to learn, grow, and dream no matter where they come from.
Aristod Benjamin has been in the U.S. since May. He says the adjustment has been difficult.
Lo más difícil fue llegar en la escuela y no saberse el idioma y para conversar con otros alumnos, para tener amigos.
He says the Welcome Center understands what he and other students like him are going through. They helped him with schoolwork and meeting new people.
Me siento muy bien. Estoy agradecido a los centros de bienvenida. Porque me han ayudado.
Marissa Allen is the Senior Director of the Multilingual Education Department at San Diego Unified. She says the center's purpose is to help students and families feel integrated into the community.
When they arrive, we want to make sure that they feel welcome. Every single student that arrives has a right to an education, and we want to make sure that they know what their rights are and that they know their rights and that they feel welcome.
The Welcoming Center is envisioned as a lounge where families can come in and get connected to resources.
Families come to us and we're able to provide services and support that make them feel welcome, providing services in their primary language and just guidance in how to navigate the school system in the United States.
The centers are set up at 5 high schools around the city, and most are open 1 day a week. They also provide basic needs, housing resources, and connections to community agencies, as well as transportation and interpretation. The centers are funded by a $1.7 million grant from the city of San Diego. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A child in Northern California has been diagnosed with bird flu. The CDC says it's the first case confirmed in a child in the U.S. Health officials say the child lives in Alameda County and is recovering at home with mild symptoms. They're investigating how the child was infected and say the child may have been exposed to wild birds. There have been at least 46 confirmed cases of bird flu in adults. Most have been farm workers. Mandy Gaither has more on what you can do to prevent an infection.
Sporadic cases of H5N1 spreading from animals to humans have prompted concern from U.S. health officials. The latest CDC data confirming 52 cases of bird flu in people since April.
As we think about a virus that might move from animals into humans and potentially cause the next pandemic, it certainly has everyone's guard up.
Ohio State epidemiologist Andrew Bowman says this latest strain of the virus came over to the U.S. in 2021 and has spread through wild birds in North America. So far in the U.S., those who have tested positive have had mild symptoms like eye redness or discharge and mild upper respiratory symptoms. The CDC says people who have tested positive have recovered from their illnesses after treatment with antiviral medications.
Every time we get the opportunity for the virus to move across species, there's the opportunity for a negative health outcome.
To reduce risk, the CDC recommends avoiding exposure to sick or dead animals, including wild birds, poultry, other domesticated birds, and unnecessary exposure to wild or domesticated animals like cows. The agency advises against drinking raw milk. They say pasteurized milk is safe to drink. Avoid exposures to things like animal waste, bedding, or other materials touched by an animal with suspected or confirmed bird flu. And for those who work with animals at risk of exposure, wear protective equipment.
At this time, I think it's heightened awareness, and there's no need to panic.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
There's bad news if you're looking to buy a house in the next 2 years. Freddie Mac reports the average rate on a standard 30-year fixed mortgage was 6.84% this week. It's the 7th weekly increase over the past 8 weeks. And economists in recent forecasts say rates are expected to stay stuck above 6% for at least the next 2 years. That means Americans hoping to become homeowners won't be getting any meaningful relief from those high borrowing costs. You now have to make a 6-figure salary to afford a new home in most U.S. cities. That, according to a new report by Oxford Economics. Jen Sullivan looks at exactly how much you need to make to afford a new home and what's causing the surge in prices.
Home prices have surged across the country in the last few years, and if you're in the market for a new house, you'll need to earn roughly $108,000 a year. That's nearly double the household income needed to afford a home 5 years ago, according to Oxford Economics. It's also much higher than the average U.S. wage, which last year was $65,470, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Experts say higher sticker prices, higher property taxes, and an increase in insurance costs are all contributing to the housing affordability crisis.
This is simply due to the fact that we have a housing shortage.
The latest data from the National Association of Realtors shows the median home sale price jumped to $418,700 last month. And experts say most mortgage companies require a 20% down payment.
Putting down 20% means coming up with 80 grand. A lot of home buyers don't have that much cash.
High interest rates are also hurting the market. As of last week, a 30-year fixed mortgage rate was at 6.78%, according to Freddie Mac.
The generation ago, Americans could buy homes in their late 20s, early 30s. Now it's really more like late 30s for a lot of Americans.
But Ostrowski says there are other loan options for home buyers.
FHA loans are available for as little as 3.5% down. There are conventional loans that you can get with as little as 5% down.
And there is good news for the future.
2025 will be a better condition for the buyers. There will be more inventory choices.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
Renters in Imperial Beach are raising alarms after the owners of an apartment complex issued mass eviction notices. KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki says tenants are urging the city council to step in.
It's a pretty diverse community that many have been here for 10 years, even longer.
The city of Imperial Beach means a lot of things to Joshua Lopez. It's the place where he found his first apartment as an adult, where he and his mother Rosa have lived for 11 years, where his mom can be close to her grandkids, who she watches while Lopez's siblings are at work.
It holds a place in my heart where it is home. It's comfort, it's safety, and I'd hate to leave it.
Now, though, Lopez is trying to figure out whether this is going to be their last year here in IB.
And it's informing us that our tenancy of this premise is terminated effective January 31st. And, you know, the immediate feeling is fear.
Lopez and his mom are being evicted. They got the news last month. And it's not just them. The new owners of their building, a 64-unit apartment complex called Hawaiian Gardens, are kicking everyone out. For decades, the building was owned by the same family. But just last year, it was sold to a real estate company called F&F Properties. Now, F&F is evicting everyone so they can renovate the building, adding new floors, cabinets, heating, and air conditioning systems. This is technically legal, and in a statement, the company argued they had gone above and beyond to help tenants by letting them keep their security deposit and 1 month of rent, and giving them 3 months to move out. But Lopez says that's not how it feels. He's a staff member with the Chula Vista Elementary School District, and he's not sure how he and his mom will afford to move on just his salary.
You're in shock, you know, especially when you've lived here for so long and you've done everything right. You know, you've followed the rules, you've paid your rent on time. You're not sure why exactly this is happening.
And Hawaiian Gardens isn't the only building bracing for this kind of eviction. In a different complex right next door, Sherman Qualls is also preparing to receive a similar notice. In May, his apartment building was purchased by another private equity firm. That same month, they got a letter saying the owners were also planning to renovate the building, and that eventually everyone would need to move out. Qualls is trying to stay positive, but the news is coming at a bad time. His wife, Marie, is dealing with several health conditions that make it hard for her to eat and get around by herself. Both of them had good jobs that left them solid retirement plans, but those medical bills are adding up.
It's all over the place, you know. You don't know what to do. A lot of people have moved out, but right now I can't afford to move out, you know, unless I take a big portion out of my savings, you know.
Again, these kinds of substantial remodel evictions are allowed under state law, even if the tenant hasn't done anything wrong. But these evictions have drawn a lot of criticism in recent years from tenants' rights groups, from San Diego and LA to the Bay Area.
Investors come in, will evict an entire complex in order to get people out and then jack up the rents to the market rate.
Jose Lopez is the San Diego director of ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment.
Every day we're losing more and more of like the naturally affordable housing, and it's just making it more difficult for people to, you know, make ends meet.
State lawmakers agree with this diagnosis. Last year, they passed the Homelessness Prevention Act, which added new limits on substantial remodel evictions, but didn't eliminate them. Some cities have gone even further. Just last month, LA banned this kind of eviction entirely. Property owners there can still do renovations, of course, but they have to help their tenants find somewhere else to stay during the remodeling and let them move back in afterwards. Dozens of renters in Imperial Beach, including Joshua Lopez and Sherman Qualls, are urging the IB City Council to consider doing the same.
We are hearing our community's needs loud and clear.
That's Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma Aguirre. She says she's planning to bring this forward for a discussion at the next city council meeting in 2 weeks.
You know, it doesn't benefit anybody putting people on the streets, especially over the holidays. And so in that regard, I would say let's look at options. Let's look at a way that is fair for everyone, that doesn't impact people and people's lives.
It is a long shot, and some people aren't waiting. Qualls is already beginning to box up their things, starting with the dishes and picture frames. He is trying to keep optimistic. As Marie's health continues to improve, he hopes their medical costs will fall, and they'll be able to afford a better place.
I don't let it bother me. Whatever I have to do to survive, I will.
Just next door, though, Joshua Lopez at Hawaiian Gardens is scared. But he's still holding out hope that the city council will act.
Moving immediately is a quick solution, but there aren't any guarantees that anywhere that we move to, you won't be faced with a similar situation, whether it's months or years down the line. And I think the more effective thing to do is to approach our city council and to work on a middle ground to prevent this from happening.
Lopez hasn't started packing just yet. In Imperial Beach, Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
We've already embraced a lot of that chilly pattern over the past couple of hours, and we're going to hold that as we transition into next week. So don't expect a big rise in the numbers or a very warm day coming at us. And the cool, showery pattern, well, that will continue for us. Could be a couple showers possible. Don't expect a lot of moisture. Most places, if we pick up anything, it's 1/10 of an inch or less. Sunday, though, is going to be the drier day of the two this weekend. And then as we transition into next week, we will pick up another chance at moisture to start it off. Of course, big holiday week coming at us. And tonight, we fall back into the 40s, 50s, even some 30s in spots. Ramona coming in at 36 for the low. Mount Laguna heading to 44 for your low. As we transition tomorrow, 65 is the high in the city. And Escondido making it to 69 degrees. Oceanside 65. Still keeping with a lot of clouds. Could there be a brief passing shower in a few locations? A possibility, but like I said, mostly our story is just not nearly as bright as what we'd expect it to be. So expect more of a cloudy trend for us as we keep the stormy pattern around. Sunday, things start to begin yet again as a new moisture plume comes in off the Pacific for some of Northern California. But as far as Southern California is concerned, we probably don't get into that action until Monday. And even for us, do we see much rain? If any at all, it's going to be a challenge. Notice the upcoming days here, holding on to the mid-60s. We are going to expect that drier day of the two, the brighter day of the two to be Sunday in pretty much every location. You'll find that in our inland communities. It's a mainly cloudy day as well on Monday. Temperatures could go up just a touch from that because of some of those extra clouds. But our story holds on to the 60s or lower 70s. For mountain communities, making it through the 50s will be a little bit windy as we transition through Sunday and kind of get that next piece of energy to push in on Monday. But like I said, as far as rainfall is concerned, which includes a lot of our desert communities here, there's really not going to be much in the way of moisture. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
Most people probably know Lucy Lawless as the actress who played Xena, Warrior Princess. Now she makes her directorial debut with the documentary Never Look Away. And KPBS film critic Beth Accomando says she's as impressive behind the camera as she was in front.
In the 1970s, Margaret Moth was the first woman camera person in New Zealand. By 1990, she was covering the Persian Gulf War for CNN. New Zealand actress Lucy Lawless remembers when she became aware of Moth.
CNN camerawoman Margaret Moth and CNN correspondent Mark Delmage were wounded this morning by sniper fire.
My mind just cast back to 1992 when my whole country was riveted to a news report about a CNN camerawoman from New Zealand who had been hit by a sniper in the face.
In that moment, Lawless knew she wanted to tell Moth's story, and now that dream has become a reality with the documentary Never Look Away.
She got on so well with military people because she was so ballsy.
Margaret never made anything about being a female. She just did it. Look at me, here's the camera. This is what I do.
Because she just tore it up. She ate life, and she was part of something greater than herself in the end, from being a completely pleasure-loving, sex, drugs, and punk music kind of person to living to tell the story of the non-combatants of war and loving the children of war. That seems to me to be an amazing and almost biblical transformation.
For a first-time director, Lawless tackles the material with both assurance and bold creativity. She gives the film a punky visual style that Moth would have loved, but also finds innovative ways to depict events from Moth's life for which there are no visuals.
And all of a sudden...
No one's running the camera when they're driving to work and Margaret gets shot in the back of the van. Somebody goes, how about diorama? And I went, oh my God, that's so old, that's new again, let's do that. So we have the black sky, an apricot light, The color of the skin of our people in the diorama will be green. All of these things don't want to go together. And then I'm going to make you even more uncomfortable by putting you in a submarine. So the sound design was so fun. The sound design and the music is designed to ratchet up your unease, just subliminally. Your nervous system's going to read it, whether you do or not. You know something horrible's coming.
Moth's life was extraordinary, and Lawless depicts it, warts and all, because Moth was a complicated, brilliant, but also flawed person. Lawless hopes people leave the film understanding the role Moth played as a truth teller.
That truth tellers, people who are dying, literally facing death to tell the truth, deserve respect and deserve our protection.
Moth also serves up a lesson about potential.
Your potential is not the horizon. Your potential is beyond the horizon. So you got to get there before you can even begin to discover how much you're capable. So if she did so much when so much had been taken away from her beauty, her teeth, her tongue, obviously her speech, her standing in the community, then who are we not to reach that little bit higher for the thing that we secretly believe we're capable of?
It doesn't matter how close you come to death. Today I'm just going to be having a lot of fun.
Lawless makes an impressive directorial debut, and Never Look Away is ultimately one powerhouse woman paying tribute to another. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Carroll. Have an excellent evening and a wonderful weekend.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.